Okay. Hi, I'm Timothy Strait,
And I'm Deborah Palmer.
and this is going to be our review of the movie Skyfall. So, I'm a Bond fan, and I've seen plenty of the Bonds, some of the older ones, most pretty much all of the Pierce Brosnan ones and all of the Daniel Craig ones, and I've seen Skyfall twice.
I know that Bond is a franchise and pretty much all the tropes that go with it, and I think I've seen like a few of the older ones, but never one in its entirety. And I think I might have seen half of Tomorrow Never Dies or something like that. I'm not even sure. And this is my first time probably watching a Bond movie in its entirety, and definitely my first time watching Skyfall.
So, let's just say there are some things we like and things we don't like about the movie, and let's just start off with the things we do like.
Yep.
Action sequences.
Pretty good action sequences.
I think that was the best part. Those were the best parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They were well choreographed, well shot, and really just awesome. I think that's how I would describe them.
I think maybe the only problem with action scenes is sometimes they'll have these leaps in logic that make you pause and go, wait, is that really a thing?
Yeah, like the crane
Yeah,
pulling
the
up the back of the car.
Of the cart of a train, and I'm not sure how cranes work, but I don't think they are supposed to be that sharp or powerful even, because you have to know, this is a crane that's just sitting there, and thanks to plot convenience, the ignition's working or whatever,
It just rips it off.
and it rips the back off.
And Bond jumps off onto the next cart, and he's just like, I'm just changing carts. But overall, I don't think that's really a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Bond,
an action movie. Most of the times, action scenes don't make sense, but if they're fun to watch, they're fun to watch.
Yeah, and the Bond movies.
I get that.
Yeah, Bond movies have never really tried to go for pure logic, even though the Craig ones have been more close to realistic. I think this is the most fantastic of the Craig movies with action sequences.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that Quantum of Solace had a few crazy things going on with that, but yeah. So action sequences awesome, some issues, but not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
And next part, directing.
There have been there's some really good scenes, like they're well delivered.
Oh.
That have been
Oh yeah.
that the director he makes the actors give like their best in it. And what I especially liked was there's the lighting and the shots. Especially there's this one scene when
in the Shanghai.
in Shanghai where there's this assassin and he's trying to shoot someone and Bond comes there, and most of it is done in the dark, and usually action scenes in the dark are really crappy because you don't see anything, but they do it like that there's this light,
These projections that are coming through the glass of the building, and that's the only light provided, and
it makes the scene look so amazing.
Yeah, and that was just one of those scenes where you're just like, wow, that looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the lead up into that didn't quite make as much sense.
Yep, but that was really
Yeah. So lots of really good shots, lots of good camera angles and stuff like that. And oh yeah, speaking of the acting, there was a lot of really good acting in this movie. Mostly from Judi Dench. Judi Dench was
Dench.
She proves why she's Dame Judi Dench.
yeah.
She, out of all of them, of the characters, even more so than Daniel Craig, she was the star of the movie.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were some lines that she delivered that you were like, whoa, I'm not gonna mess with Judi Dench.
I mean, she doesn't have action scenes or something. She doesn't fight, but she destroys you with her words, and that's dang.
Yeah, she basically told the main villain off. She was like, I don't care who you are, you're nothing, and then she just walks out, and you're like, whoa, awesome.
Judi Dench don't care.
Yeah. And other ones were good, like Daniel Craig was good, even though.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like he could have done better, but I think that's kind of the director's fault. He didn't give him enough to do, or something like that.
And some of the some of the scenes were just a little off. I think we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think there was a lot of good acting. I can't really complain, except for maybe the main villain's acting.
Yeah, but we're getting to that
We'll
later.
get to that later.
One last thing that we thought was really cool about this movie, or what we thought people might like,
Right.
is that because, this is the 50th
Wow.
anniversary movie, or the 23rd movie, or
It's
something
the
like that.
23rd movie and the 50th anniversary of the Bond franchise.
Yeah, so it's like a big deal, and they pull out the stops. There's like really good nods to the
Old ones.
old ones. Like some of them are really subtle.
Yeah.
That's what I liked. I think probably my favorite nod was the shaken not stirred one, because
Oh.
it's just, it goes by in a moment, and then when you get
Yeah.
it, then you're like, oh, I see what you did
Yeah,
there.
though it also continues the Daniel Craig movies. I don't really remember as much from Quantum of Solace, but I do remember him not saying ever, "I'd like shaken, not stirred." So that continues. But I think it was a very good scene right with that. And there were they would make references to titles. There was one part where Bond brings in some evidence, and he was like, bring this to M. It's for her eyes only. And I was just like, I see what you did there. And when then Bond is getting some toys, and he's like, oh, this isn't exactly Christmas, is it? And they're like, what, were you expecting, an exploding pen? So there was also good.
Yeah, let's stop there. We're gonna give him.
That does start giving away.
Basically, the good things about this movie is action sequences, dumb as they may be,
Yeah.
good camera angle shots, and definitely good lighting, well delivered lines, and some good nods to old Bond movies. So for the Bond fans out there, they'll appreciate this.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate it. So now we get to some of the stuff that we didn't like.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So let's just start off with saying that the plot itself is fairly weak at points.
Yeah.
It's not really so bad when you're watching the movie and the plot is kind of going along.
I mean, at first it seems fine. I thought I'm getting into this. I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, because I'd been complaining to her about how much I didn't like the plot.
Yeah, definitely.
And because then I didn't also want to spoil too much, so we went and saw it, and she was like, "Okay, this isn't as bad." But then it kind of hits a point when the main villain is introduced, and it was just
And things just got uncomfortable fast. I mean, I think they were getting uncomfortable before, but that's another issue. But it's when it gets to around the second act, you would say.
Yeah, it's when Mr. Silva is introduced.
Yeah, definitely. It starts to brittle down. I mean, it's true they still have a few. It's not like they don't have good scenes anymore, but it really just gets bad. It starts chipping away.
There were a lot of good individual scenes. I think we talked about before, like the one between M and the main bad guy. I think that was a really powerful scene.
Definitely.
But it's the stuff in between these good scenes. It's weak or just disjointed. I mean, for the first, I guess, half of the movie, up till Bond goes through Shanghai, that I can forgive some of the stuff. There were a lot of really convenient. Oh, hey, look, this is a bullet used by only 5 people in the world, and we're going to track them down through this. Or, hey, look, I found this little coin, and this tells me exactly where I need to go. So, I mean, it's not as bad.
Yeah,
but
you can go with that, because sometimes you need stuff like that to move the plot along, because these are plot necessities. If you didn't have this convenience, then you wouldn't have a story. But then some stuff are just a little.
It's after the main villain is introduced. Since there was a whole plot going on of they'd gotten a list of undercover NATO agents that were all undercover in terrorist organizations, and they were releasing this on the internet. And they were like, James Bond, like, you need to go and you need to stop that. And after the main villain they meet him, it's the entire plot is dropped. It's they don't.
It's wait, what was?
Well, yeah, they stop. They never again. Once they meet him, and after that part, it's never mentioned again when Bond gets back. I think they mention it maybe once, and after that, you don't deal with any of the other agents who are captured, or the fact of. In fact, I don't even remember if they got the list back.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of vague.
That was the driving point for the first part of the movie, and afterwards, it's just.
It's like a lot of stuff getting picked up and then dropped.
Yeah, and then the main part comes from the. Once the main villain is introduced, it's all about him and him basically taking over everything.
It's him and his agenda and his.
Yeah, and I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but I think the villain kind of ruined the story, personally.
Which is pretty bad for a Bond movie. You're supposed to have like competent villains to make the accomplishments of the hero look even more amazing. But the problem is not that he's incompetent, it's
he was too competent.
He's hyper competent, and I guess that's kind of our next topic. It's this villain.
Talking about some of the characters, is that while I did like some of the characters, M was definitely my favorite.
Oh yeah.
Though I did feel like sometimes the movie, especially towards the latter part of the movie, it shifted completely away from James Bond. Excuse me. I shifted away from James Bond, and even though we were learning more about James Bond's character, it was like, boom, this is all about M when the villain comes up in. I don't know, it seemed a little off to me in a Bond movie. But overall, the characters were good. Eve, from the first part of the movie,
She was, well, they first set her up to be this
action girl.
Basically
going in and shooting stuff.
But then everything that she does, she's either sidelined or she doesn't deliver quite well.
Yeah, I think it's another thing is a lot of the women. I think I got a lot of sexism from this movie personally. With what happened to some of the characters is that all the women, all the female characters,
with names. Pretty much.
Were either killed, underdeveloped, or incompetent.
Or a combination.
Or a combination of the three. And I mean, we won't spoil anything for for what exactly happened, but I will say that Eve basically ended up saying, I can't do field work because I'm not good at it. And it was like, it wasn't an attempt to develop the character, it wasn't anything saying, all right, I'm not good at this, so I should try to work on that. It's I give up. You're right, I'm not good at anything.
It's like you could maybe see it as some sort of character development if I don't know if you'd have spent a little more time with her or seen that if they would have shown her doing more field work or something like that and showed that she sort of has a ability to do this, but she decides this is just not her thing. If I would have been fine with that if she decided to do a desk job because she decided, you know what, I've tried it, it was okay, but I don't think this is my call. I'm gonna change majors, whatever. But
but it was more of I can't do it, so
I quit.
And then there was this one female character. I can't remember her name. And which is sad because she was one of my favorite characters.
She was an interesting character.
She looked like she was going to be a Bond girl, and it's not going to say what happened, but she wasn't important after the villain came in. It was just, she was like, they introduced her as a sympathetic character who has been being oppressed by the main bad guy, and you're thinking, all right, he's going to get out, she's going to be the Bond girl, and come in, and then
they just dispose of her character.
Yeah, she's dropped, and that's it. Bond shows absolutely no emotion. He doesn't even seem to remember that she existed after the villain came in, and it was kind of jarring because she did have a lot of stuff that she was saying, because she even pleaded to Bond to help her, and he was like, okay, I'll help you, and then, oh, who are you? And, talking about the other characters, we talked about the villain a bit, and his setup was underwhelming.
Yeah, you said it reminded you of Goldeneye?
Yeah.
To a degree?
Because what they tried to do is they tried to set up a, look, we're the same kind of a thing, two of the same coin. Like, they were both the Bond and the main bad guy, this Mr. Silva, were both agents that were both, had a close relationship with M. kind of as a mentor mother figure, but he was never really set up properly for that, because he's mentioned vaguely several times throughout the movie before his introduction, and he's this planner who he'd been wanting to take his revenge, or this is all some big machination that is all part of the plot, and he wanted whatever, he gets what he wants, and he wanted an island, so he got all the inhabitants to evacuate using his computer, and there was never anything interesting set up about his character. And then when he is introduced, there's no proper introduction like, I am Mr. Silva, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, he basically just walks into the room and starts saying this weird metaphor for their situation, and you're like, wait, who are you? I mean, I know from the trailer that you're the bad guy, but who are you actually?
Yeah, because what happens is that once they go to this island and they're captured, and Bond's sitting there all tied up, and he's just like kind of being Bond, and he comes down in this elevator and steps out and immediately just starts going into that metaphor of talking about, and it was really long, and frankly I found it really unnecessary, talking about how you and I are two rats that have been taught to cannibalize others and other rats. And it was like, you talked about how it was M who changed our nature to be evil, and it was, I didn't understand that, because it seemed like a rather, the implication was that M had trained them to kill off other agents, which I didn't understand, and made me feel a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So the villain himself.
Yeah, the villain, he just had this aura of uncomfortableness, like.
Oh, and then when he, I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about what he did, but when he, should we at least mention it?
I guess maybe, so that they'll go in prepared.
So he comes in after he delivers this this weird metaphor. It was he pulls up a chair and sits right up next to Bond, and
he's like this close.
He's like like really really close to him, and he kind of moves over his shirt to look over at a scar, a wound that he got at the beginning of the movie.
And he does it all sensually.
Yeah. He goes in slowly and starts stroking the scar and starts kind of pulling his shirt over and then stroking his throat and his chin.
And the way he's talking, it sounds like it's dripping with innuendo.
And then he slowly slides his hands on his legs, and it's just, oh my god! And this is his introductory scene. This is how the villain is introduced. It made him really uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable. And you could even feel that Daniel Craig felt really uncomfortable with that scene, because he just kind of had this look, and his line was just like, I can't believe they're making me do this. But okay, let's move on. I don't want to talk about it anymore. We need to talk about the use of sex in this movie and how it's very inappropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, no. I will admit, the Bond movies have always had sex in them. That's just the thing. Bond is a ladies' man. He says he comes in, he sleeps with the woman, usually the Bond girl, and then kind of goes on his merry way, shooting the bad guys, beating Dr. No and stuff. But and from what I can remember, I remember there being one time in each of the Daniel Craig movies that I remember is that he slept with a woman once in each of those. It was the Vesper in Casino Royale, and there was that one MI6 agent chick who he slept with in Quantum of Solace. And those are the only ones that I remember, and those were both important characters in those movies. In this one, there's a lot of just wanton sex. Like after Bond has this dramatic death, and we see this thing of M and trying to set up the plot for the bad guy hacking into MI6 and stuff like that.
And then there's this these scenes of Bond doing whatever. He's there living low or something like that.
He's on this weird island, and it's never explained where exactly this is. It's just oh, he fell in a river and he went off and he was shot like 2 or 3 times. And he's just, all of a sudden he's better, and the first time you see him, he's having sex with this one woman, and that's it. And then he moves on to go and start drinking, and then he sees the TV, and he's like, I have to go back and save England.
And the scene, I guess, I understand what they're trying to set up with is that he's trying to live a normal life, but he doesn't know how to live it or something like that. But the way they set it up later, that this guy, Ralph Fiennes, or as I like to call him, Voldemort without makeup. So basically, they're trying to say, why didn't you just stick it out there and stay low? Because that's like the perfect escape.
Yeah.
Like no one would have looked for you. They would have just left you. They would have believed you were dead. You had the perfect excuse, and you came back. Why would you do that? And based on that, it seems like they're implying as if he wanted to be like under the radar. That it seemed like from those scenes as if he was miserable.
Yeah.
Like he didn't like this life. Like wasn't anything he crapped up to be. I mean, he basically, like, he sees the news that the MI6 headquarters has been blown up.
And then the next thing you know, he pops up in England, and there's never any explanation.
And he's like, basically, he has a huge sigh of relief of, oh, finally something to do. And then he's gone.
Yeah. Okay, time warp.
So yeah. Basically, I didn't really buy the whole that he was tempted to stay undercover. Yeah. And then, like all the other plot points, that's kind of ignored after a while.
Yeah.
They don't bring it up anymore.
Yeah, and the problem is that there's never explained of anything of what he's doing there. There's never anything establishing where this is, or why he's there, or if he has any sort of connection there, or if he's there because there are people taking care of him. It's just, he's there, he's having sex with this one woman, he's in a bar, then he leaves.
Oh yeah, and his other use of sex and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and back to the sex is there was this one woman that we mentioned that she becomes basically, she's dropped after the villain is introduced, is that it's established by Bond. He figures out, using Sherlock Holmes-esque deductive reasoning, that he said that he saw a mark on her, and he says, oh, I know that mark, that's the sex trait of whatever, and he says, what were you, like 12 or 13? And she basically was like, oh crap, you know what this is. And that's when Bond promised to get her out of it and save her from this bad guy. And
then it's around here that I think the movie starts troubling.
Yeah, so basically she says, I'm leaving, she's telling the location of this boat that she has, and she says, we're leaving in an hour. If you're going to help me, be there. So Bond runs into some goons, he fights him, and then he fights the CGI Komodo dragons.
Oh my god, the CGI Komodo dragons, I don't even know.
Yeah, we'll talk about that right after this. And so he comes in, and so after he deals with them, it cuts to a scene of this woman on her boat, and the guy is the captain of the boat, so like saying, we're getting ready to take off, and she's just like, oh no, he didn't come. So then she goes and takes a shower, which seems to be a gratuitous shot of, hey look, she's in a shower, and look how hot she is. And then what happens is Bond walks in on the shower naked and just kind of comes into her, and then they obviously have sex, and it was really uncomfortable because this woman was a sex slave from preteens, and it's just you just went in and had sex with her. It was, oh.
Yeah, and he didn't even catch that the first time, right?
Yeah, I didn't catch that. I was watching someone else's review, and they pointed it out, and I was like, oh my gosh, that scene is now infinitely more uncomfortable.
I mean, danger or whatever, I think any normal person, or, I mean, I can't say this for sure because, I didn't have that lifestyle, but if I were in her shoes, like, this guy, he's left me waiting and pretty much made me think that he's dead, or
that was the implication, that she thought he was dead.
That she thought he was dead, or just in
Didn't care.
Didn't care. And
Just walks in you in the shower.
And then he walks into the shower. I think the first thing I would have done was like whack him or something and say, "What the heck,
What's wrong with you?" But yeah, and I contrast this with the scene from Casino Royale, where during the main game of that they played, I think it was Hold'em. These guys who were fighting Le Chiffre, who were, I don't know, they were Jamaican or something. They basically wanted money from him. They ran into Bond and had while he was with Vesper, and they had this brawl. It took him down a whole flight of stairs, and there's a part where they ended up killing him. I think Vesper ended up getting a guy, and she heard a gunshot, and it kind of freaked her out, and then Bond ends up killing them, and he basically says, "All right, I need you to go up to the room and go and get ready," or something. And then he goes in there, and he sees the shower on, and she's just kind of sitting there in the shower, like freaking out, like, "Oh my gosh, I just saw someone get killed. I saw like 3 people get killed," and so she's shaking. And then Bond just comes in there and just kind of sits in the shower and just kind of sits with her for a minute. And you know what? I think that was really effective. They didn't need any.
I mean, I didn't see that movie, but I guess it sounds like it's a little bit faster, but you can understand.
Yeah.
Where it's coming from. There's something emotional. Here, this was just blatantly fan service. It's like, that dog.
Yeah, and so that's 2 times Bond had sex in this movie. And then we get to the Eve scene, who Eve is the one chick from the beginning who ended up shooting him.
Oh, yeah.
Whoops. And,
oopsies.
There's one scene in Shanghai. It was right before he went off.
And met this woman
that he's sitting there, and he's shaving, and he pulls out a straight blade razor, and he's going to shave, and she comes in to basically to debrief him on something, and he's like, "I've already been debriefed. Why are you here?" And they have this weird sexual tension moment, and he hands her the razor and has her shave him with this blade, and there was a lot of there was an implication that it was kind of ambiguous. So I don't know if they had sex after that, and it was just okay. The entire scene ended up being pointless.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what they were trying to do. If they were trying to resolve the whole issue that, hey, this is the woman who shot you by mistake when she was supposed to take down this other guy on a mission, and they were just trying to show that he trusts her enough to give her a razor blade.
Even though there really was no reason for him to trust her, because she was the one person who
basically botched up their mission and almost had him killed. I mean, she didn't give him the fatal blow. He already had like a gunshot wound
in his
from before that. But then because she missed her shot or hit him by mistake, and that's another thing, you'd never see the wound from her gunshot. You only see the one that he...
Yeah, because when he's chasing the bad guy in the first scene, he gets shot in the shoulder, and that shoulder, and you can see the blood coming in from that scene. And that's the wound that persists throughout the entire movie, and there's a whole thing of him trying to get used, because like something's wrong, like he can't quite move around as well, and then he gets shot with a rifle round, and that look, I'm guessing it hit him in the torso or something in the chest area, and there's no wound whatsoever. And there's no hint that he was wearing any bulletproof vest or anything.
Yes, so, I mean, he couldn't have been wearing one, otherwise how would he have gotten injured in the first place by the first guy? So that, I mean, now that I think of it, that makes the implication even worse. That means that not only did she miss her target, but she didn't hit anything, and he fell into the water because
but she did shoot
startled.
him. But she did shoot him, and that was the one thing where they show him, and he's shot, and he's like, boom! And then he falls, and then we get Adele's theme song. But
opening scene definitely.
We forgot to say that the opening scene was trippy, like all Bond openings are, but it was really good. And I love the song Skyfall, and I think it's a great song. Mm-hmm. Adele has a beautiful voice in it, and I think I just think it was a good thing, and the good opening. A lot of they show stuff that happens later in the movie, even though I don't particularly like what happened.
Yeah, like the payoff for that. I mean, the setup of that, you thought that there was going to be some really deep stuff going on in this movie, and then it's
Nothing
really
that,
underwhelming.
yeah, it's style over substance.
Yeah.
So, and then, oh yeah. Throughout the movie, there's this whole theme of the old versus the new,
Oh man.
and it was
Of all the
of all the things that they could do. It's not just bad. It was also really confusing. Like, I couldn't quite figure out if they were trying to say that the old style of human agents and old style espionage is great, and look at the old Bond movies, look how awesome they are, or if they were trying to say, oh, well, that's just completely in the past. We have computers, and computers can do anything, including blowing up gas lines and stuff like that. I don't know, but
I mean, I can understand a little bit that they were trying to play up the fact that, Daniel Craig is not as young as he used to be when he made Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale even. But in the way that they do it, they keep on, every now and then there's a character who's there like, hey, James Bond, you're old, why don't you retire already? And you're like, what?
Yeah, and they kept, and it's never subtle. It's always in your face. It's, like someone will come in and like they had the prime minister who's going on and basically called out M for saying, you think we live in the golden age of espionage where we have human intelligence when you refuse to use anything else, and we have computers, and computers are so much better. And I didn't get that. That didn't make sense, because it's like they were trying to tell us that they thought that having human agents out in the field was completely useless, and they were going to disband the 00 program
just because they had an infiltration. They're like, yep, that proves that you're
completely incompetent, and there's nothing you can do.
And the thing is, what you have to consider is, especially terrorist cells.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they don't have high-tech stuff. I'm even surprised they were able to see the YouTube video or whatever. Basically, you can't expect them to have all their information on the
internet.
I wanted to say a different word for it because I was getting tired of saying internet, but basically, the information highway.
And it ended up as a false dichotomy of saying you can only have computers or you can only have agents, and I don't get that, because they've used plenty of other stuff besides direct human agents for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that one of the things about Bond movies, that it's like this super secret agent and his cool toys?
Yeah, a lot of, especially the older ones, and we did get a mention of it was, and then there's that one scene where we meet a younger character. Won't tell you his identity, but he comes in and he's basically a snot to James Bond, basically calling him old and stuff. Oh yeah, they meet in this museum. Bond is basically, right before he goes off on one of his missions, he gets his cool stuff, and in this museum, which I don't know why they gave him that in the museum. I don't know why they couldn't.
Yeah, how did they even sneak the past?
Yeah, it was a gun. It was a specialized gun, and they got it through museum security.
I mean, museum security can be tough.
Yeah, and it was they sat. Bond was sitting looking at this one painting, and it was. The painting was of this ship, this old warship, being tugged in by a steamboat or a coal-driven boat.
And you think that would be enough implication of what he's thinking about, or that, maybe he's been around too long or something like that?
Yeah, and then the scene character comes up and basically...
And he basically tells you what you're supposed to be getting from this scene, and you're like, really?
Yeah, and he says, oh, I always think it's so melancholic. Warship being tugged in for scrap because it's useless, and it's like, and he basically shot, and they have a whole banter sequence, which I thought it was kind of funny, but I didn't care about that whole old versus new thing, because it was I don't know, it almost seemed completely pointless. And they kept trying to say, and then near the end of the movies they're like, oh, the old ways are the best, and he pulls out a knife, and it's just like, and they kept mentioning it over and over, and where it was like, okay, mention it once and then resolve it. We don't need to have it completely thrown in our face. It's like they assume that we were too stupid to remember that. And that was really annoying.
So you think we've talked enough? Or-
Oh yeah. Did I talk? I don't. Did I?
yeah, you mentioned Goldeneye a little bit. Basically, you were talking about the villain and how it's similar.
And I don't remember if I went into full explanation of this. That Mr. Silva, they tried. I think I mentioned that they tried to make him a counterpart to Bond. Though I can't help but think that Goldeneye did this a lot better, because we're basically told by the main villain that, oh, you and I are the same, and it kind of reeked of really, like, you and I will rule the galaxy. And it was just, and it didn't seem like it was clear writing. It was like they couldn't do it subtly, so they threw it in your face. But with GoldenEye, you had the main villain was Alex Treven, who was 006, who was basically, he feels betrayed by Bond in the beginning of the movie for not giving him the amount of time that he thought he had to get out before the place blew. So, and in that regard, you can understand. You can say that, okay, he's another 00 agent. He's worked with Bond a lot. He's like a brother to him. He feels betrayed. So so you can see that they are already playing the duality of, this is the Bond but evil, and then here's Bond who's good, fighting each other. And it was never outright said, oh, you and I are the same, though I think it might have been mentioned once or twice, but it was more of a side thing of, you and I are the same.
Yeah, basically from what he tells me, or from what you tell me, I don't know why I'm like third person here, but basically it sounds like as if it's the same plot, except instead of the tension being with Bond himself, his rage is more at N.
Yeah, and
so they like replaced the sibling rivalry, pseudo sibling rivalry in GoldenEye with uncomfortable mother complex.
Yeah, and I think is it too spoilery to talk about what he did, his whole motivation, the bad guy's motivation?
Maybe it is a little bit, but it's...
We'll spoil it a little bit. I think there's one point we'll talk about this, and then we'll kind of sum it up. Is that GoldenEye, and I don't even think it's the same plot from GoldenEye, because at least with GoldenEye, I think GoldenEye was just a much better movie. and Skyfall had a lot of issues with the plot not kind of connecting, and at GoldenEye, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the pinnacle of writing, but it did the whole two agents versus each other thing a lot better than Skyfall did. And
because
Skyfall is to continually remind you that this guy is the same, and
also this guy is like ridiculously crazy prepared, like to the point that he can predict unpredictable
trains. So it's just, and that's one of the problems that I had with the villain, is that he's so hyper competent that whenever he does something, he always wins, and he has this ridiculous plot that really it's a gamble of everything that happens. He would have to be at the right time. Everything would have to be in the right place. Even the trains were going by. It's the one part where he gets a train. He kind of manipulates. He blows up a wall, and then a train comes flying through at Vaughn, and you're just like, well, okay, so he knew that train was going to be right there.
And what you have to consider is that the London Underground is known for never being on time.
Yeah, I've read that some people complain about the movie with that, because the trains, I mean, I don't think it's just London. I think in New York they have it too. It's just any busy train system. It's not going to be predictable, and this guy can predict it.
The Austrian train system is pretty good when they're not renovating, but that's besides the point, I think.
Oh yeah, you Austrian. But yeah, and the whole point is that he seemed so hyper competent that it got obnoxious. I kind of got flashbacks to The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's Joker. It was just like, oh my gosh, why doesn't anyone just shoot him already? Because this guy is crazy.
And the difference here is that these people are allowed to shoot people to kill them.
Yeah, this isn't Batman, where Batman is like, I won't kill. I'm not gonna kill. I won't lower myself to your level. It was Bond. I mean, Bond. In fact, there was one funny moment where Bond has a psych evaluation, and it's they're playing the game where they have one word. You say a word, and then
word association,
and he's like murder, and Bond's like employment. It's like, and you're just wondering why this guy wasn't shot earlier, and it was like the plot needed him. Oh yeah, we need to talk about the motivation. His motivation was rather iffy and seemed to change on a whim almost, because
like at first it's like he's going to
he's raging at M. And at first, in his whole spiel about how she corrupted us and stuff, and then he goes after her, and then when that doesn't work, he goes after Bond, and he has this whole thing of at the end of the movie, he's like, "Leave Bond to me. Bond is mine."
No, actually, I think he was like he wanted to have M for himself, but
I thought. I mean, when I was watching it, I thought he was like, "I want Bond for myself," and then afterwards, once Bond got out, and he was like, "M is mine," and I was really confused.
Now, this thought just occurred to me that, like, setting up villains, if they had like put a little bit of this, if they had made the opening scene about him, that would have made it that much better. Like, I didn't see Goldeneye, but
yeah, it started out as an opening with 006 and 007 on a mission, which ended up kind of screwing over 006, and that was his start of darkness. That's why he ended up becoming a villain.
The movie that I did see that sort of this reminded me of is like The Incredibles.
Oh,
like it starts with Mr. Incredible doing his superhero things and Buddy.
And Buddy's I'm incredible.
Yeah,
I'm your biggest fan.
Messing things up, and then you see this stuff happen, and
then how Mr. Incredible is a jerk to him.
Yeah, how Mr. Incredible is a jerk to him, and then you can understand where his motivation comes from, and it's clear cut and stuff like that. And then when he finally appears,
he's like, "Oh, remember, I am your biggest fan."
And maybe it's obvious to you as a viewer who he is because you recognize his voice.
It wasn't obvious to me at first, but when he did that, it was like, "Holy crap!" And then he goes.
But then it makes sense, and you know that this person is, and you're like, "Oh crap!"
And you buy it,
and you buy it, and you're like, "Okay, now he's in trouble right now, man."
Yeah, the Skyfall's villain.
Like, in Skyfall's villain, all you've just heard of him is this big mutterings of, "Oh, he must be one of us, and who could he be?" and stuff like that.
And I guess so smart.
And they're trying to set him up, but it doesn't impress me. It's just like he comes into the room talking about dead rats or something, and you're like, "Who are you?" And stop touching James Bond. That's weird.
Yeah, and So yeah, I think that's all that we can get in without going into a bunch of spoilers.
Yeah, I think we might have spoiled them.
Yeah, I think we've already spoiled enough. So to sum it up, the plot was fairly weak once the main villain was introduced. It kind of fell apart and stopped making sense a lot altogether.
I mean, I, as like a movie viewer, could understand why the critics like it, and
there's a lot to like.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, and I can see where the director was going with this and what he was trying to set up to do, but it could have been done so much better.
Yeah, that's one of my thoughts is that, if they did this, it would have made so much more sense, and it seems like a lot of first draft issues with the plot. Yeah,
it's like Metro Golden Mayer needed to be saved from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Let's do a Bond movie. Everybody loves Bond movies.
Yeah, quick, we need a Bond movie. The plot ended up... It started out great, but once things kind of started rolling, it kind of started building, and then the villain was introduced, and it was like, I puttered out.
Yeah.
Until we ended up with a weird kind of explanation. And we're not going to talk about that in this video, but it was just... It wasn't all that great. The characters... There's a lot of issues with the characters. I think Bond got some development, but I didn't really feel like he grew much from it.
No.
The villain himself was really bad. He's hyper confident. He's super flamboyant and in the worst ways, and I couldn't tell if he was trying to, if the Javier Bardem was actually trying to be over the top because I don't know if he thought that the movie wasn't all that great and he tried to ham it up, but everything else was done so seriously and so dramatically. Even all the other characters acting, he seems out of place. He seems like he would have fit better more as an older Bond villain.
Yeah.
Because he's like, especially a Brosnan. He might have been better as a Brosnan villain if he was better written.
Maybe it was. Maybe he was also a callback.
Yeah. Remember when villains were crazy? Remember that media mogul who wanted to start World War III? Good times. Oh, and M. Yeah, I think M got some development in this.
Yeah, M was definitely the best developed character, but then the way
Yeah.
they treat her at the end, it's like
it's yeah, and there's a lot of sexism, and M is just. I kind of ended up feeling that at sometimes M became the main character. It kind of seemed...
Which isn't bad in theory, but
But
when there's like almost nothing going on with Bond and it's just M, then that's a little problematic.
Yeah, and Bond had to gripe with his injuries, and I can understand his injuries, but then they eventually said that he was so out of shape and he's unfit for duty,
and then after a while they just like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and
what's happening? So that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, Bond never experiences any moment where he,
like apart from that one scene, the one that I mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't become an issue anymore.
Yeah, and there are also some. I feel like mentioning some continuity issues. Like he'll walk in, like one scene near the end, he had a coat. This is a little out of order right now, but it popped into my mind is that the one scene where he had, like near the end, he had a coat on and a scarf, and he walks into a building and the coat and scarf are gone. And then there was one scene where he's on ice, and he's sitting there, and the main villain had stopped him by shooting at him, and he's standing on the ice. And then this henchman comes out from behind him, literally like out of absolutely nowhere. It was literally like hidden right behind Bond, and you saw a full shot of Bond running on the ice, and he stops.
I call him Ninja Flunky.
Yeah, he was Ninja Flunky because
he's not gonna last
very long.
Till the next scene.
Yeah, because they ended up falling in the water, and Bond basically magically survives hypothermia in a frozen water. But issues. Another stuff about Bond's character is that we kind of got some development on him, but it was unnecessary and rather distracting. Mm-hmm. And I won't spoil that because that's definitely one of the big twists at the end. And, but it was kind of a weak twist where you're like, oh wow, that
really,
wait, really. So
I know what we forgot to talk about. CGI Komodo dragons.
I almost thought this was over. We forgot the CGI.
Just CGI Komodo dragons, and we're done. We promise.
We'll move on to our summary. But,
okay.
Yeah, so there's a scene when he's in Shanghai. He goes to this casino area, and where he meets that woman, and he ends up fighting these guys who are going to kill him, and
they fall. This casino for some reason is a pit with Komodo dragons.
Yeah, and they're like huge. I would say 5 feet long at least.
Yeah.
And they're huge things, and they're obviously CG. I mean, you look at that, and you're not like, holy crap, it's a big Komodo dragon. You're like, look at CG.
I was like, what they couldn't get some real Komodo dragons. I mean, I know Komodo dragons are dangerous, but come on.
Yeah, and they were they were like man-eating Komodo dragons, and
well,
I don't know. I don't really know anything about Komodo dragons.
Do eat meat. Flesh. Yeah,
but it was like it seemed kind of ridiculous when they fall into the pit because. I don't know. The scene really didn't jive well because he had fought those other guys with a briefcase, and then they fall in, and this one guy is like, "Oh, I got you." And then he gets bitten and dragged back, and then it was like, I don't know, like Paranormal Activity gets dragged, and like, oh, and then into the shadows, but
it's like basically somebody thought, you know what, this scene needs Komodo dragons. They're like, we can't afford Komodo dragons.
CGI. But, yeah, so, okay, so we talked about that.
Okay.
Back to the character summary. There was I think a lot of sexism in this movie.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like outright them saying, oh, look how superior women are terrible. It's just a lot of the implications.
Yeah,
is that
very bad implications.
All the named women were Like I think the main three, it was like
Yeah.
they were either you're killed, underdeveloped, or incompetent to the point where they're like, okay, whatever, I can't do this because I suck.
Or
And Bond remains the only agent in MI6 who's not a sack of potatoes.
Yep.
He's the only person who can do anything, and that really bugs me because it kind of devalues everyone else around him to make him look good. Yeah,
yeah, like maybe the only developed moment I'd say is M. That's
definitely.
the payoff is.
And in the movie seemed to focus a lot on her, especially when
I guess maybe this movie was sort of like a send off for Judi Dench.
Yeah, because this was definitely her last one. They spend most of the movie. I wouldn't say most of the movie. Maybe every Judi Dench scene, they end up talking about how you're going to retire voluntarily in 2 months, and we're going to give you an award. And she's just like, what?
She's like, no, I'm
No.
not.
Yeah,
Judi Dench don't care.
Yeah, Judi Dench don't care, and I thought that's what I liked about her is that she was like, no, I'm not. And but at the end of the movie, I think my mom, when I saw it with her, she said it's the boys' club again.
And
It's-
that might be giving away too much already, but
But yeah, it's like Judi Dench isn't M anymore. You know, it was it was inevitable. They said in the beginning, you're getting fired. In less words, more or less the same thing, and it was like, oh, there's men in here, and the only women is the receptionist, and it was. I got a lot of those kinds of implications from the movie, even if they didn't intend that. Moving on, the theme of the movie was old versus new, but oftentimes it seemed nonsensical.
yeah, it's not really resolved.
It's not resolved. It tries to throw references to old Bonds, then it and it mocks the old Bonds, and then they kind of had a triumphant return of Bond, of old stuff in the end, but I just kind of was left with what were they trying to say with this?
Yeah, it's like all over the
Yeah.
place. So basically, good action scenes, if kind of silly, very good
Directing.
like shots and lighting.
Except with the character interactions and stuff. I don't think that direction was all that great. But,
I mean, sometimes they were
yeah,
good,
sometimes
but
it was a few good scenes out of a lot of messy stuff.
Yeah.
There were a lot of great shots. There were a lot of good. There's a lot of great lighting in it, and especially one scene that takes place at night near the end, and there's a big fire, and you're like, okay, and that lights up, and I think it was kind of a good effect. But yeah, it just.
so
Yeah.
I guess the best accomplishment of this movie for this director is he knows how to shoot action scenes in the dark.
Yeah, and hey, look at it. Adele sang a great song.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really like giving ratings, which is why I'm not a movie rater, but if you're an old fan of Bond, I would say see it. A lot of people did enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it because I find plot to be one of the most important elements, and this movie was very weak on plot. But if you don't really care as much about plot, I guess you would enjoy it. If you're not going in there thinking about if you don't really care about the characters much, then I think you'll really enjoy the movie. But I mean, other than that, I can't say that I really like this movie. I don't like this movie. I wouldn't personally recommend it if you ask me.
Well, like, my opinion, so basically, now that I think about it, in a way, I sort of avoided Bond movies because of this. This is sort of what I imagine Bond movies to be like, that it's a lot of pointless but thrilling action. He screws girls left and right, and
it was never.
And there's not much of a plot, but I heard later that no, Bond movies are actually pretty good, and that's why they're popular, because there's actually something in it that's substantial, and the characters are likable, and blah 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 blah. But
Yeah.
this movie,
It's style over substance.
it's style over substance, and if I'm honest with myself, I can't say I hate it. I can see why people would like it,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not my favorite. So it's meh to me.
Yeah, and I think there's enough good in it to say that warrants watching it. Well, but yeah, so Skyfall was a lot of good stuff, a lot of bad stuff, and it comes off as overall meh, which I think you said that Mother Teresa said, was it
Yeah,
Mother Teresa?
yeah, it was Mother Teresa. I'm pretty sure. Well, I think the quote goes that the opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference.
In Skyfall.
And Skyfall like inspired no emotion in me. I was just like watching it, going, "Huh, that's goofy."
Yeah, it inspired when I first time I saw it. It inspired a lot of rage in me. Like, no, I hate that.
And
What did you do?
You
Why
can
did you mess up
understand that
character?
because he watched the Bond movie, so he's going to get an emotional response out of it. But I didn't really watch Bond movies in general, so I just watched it and I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, and the second time I watched it again so that I could have everything fresh in my mind. I walked in and I was sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm expecting myself to hate it, and then I came across like, I don't care. There were a lot of characters that I did care about. Now I just don't care anymore, and I think that means the movie failed on pretty much everything. So I guess that sums up our review of our video call, even if it was a bit jumbled around.
Yeah.
But
you can tell this is unscripted.
Yeah, unscripted and
badly
real.
cut.
Yeah. Time warps. But so yeah, I think that wraps it all up.
All right. So how do we end this?
Go punch a bear in the face.